Next, I would like to invite Professor Thirunavukkarasu from University of Hyderabad to address the event. Sir, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Pugail. Thank you, friends. It's always a pleasure to speak to the audience of DPF. It's a great honor, and particularly to speak on Periyar. And so much has been said about Periyar, and today it is part of our popular understanding. Anybody in Tamil Nadu can speak a few words about Periyar, mostly positively, and there are some growing numbers of people very sarcastically speaking ill of Periyar nowadays. So effectively, Periyar is everywhere else. There is no doubt about it. Everybody in Tamil Nadu can speak a few words about Periyar. That's the greatest asset of Periyar, or rather the greatest contribution of Periyar, so to speak. So sometime in 2021, the man who died 50 years ago, almost 50 years ago, and lived for almost 95 years, had done something very, very incredibly remarkable things in the case of Tamil society. How do I make sense of this man's contribution to the 21st century population in Tamil Nadu, or for that matter, the entire subcontinent? Can I designate him as merely a kind of an atheist, reckless atheist, or as people allegedly talk about Periyar? Or some people say that he is the one who simply talked about nasty things about a particular community, particularly the so-called priestly community. Or is he the one, the new, the Himmler varieties have come up recently in Tamil Nadu, are alleging that he is the one who actually ruined the Tamil nationalist spirit, right? There are many ways that Periyar has been part of the everyday trope, no doubt, positively or negatively. But it is pertinent to talk about this man and his important contributions to Tamil society and why it is important. The reason is he's an original thinker. Definitely he's an original thinker. The reason, he was not a intoxicated intellectual. He was deeply influenced by Marxism, Leninism, no doubt. He went to Soviet Union, and of course he had some bitter experiences, and he was asked to leave Soviet Union. That's okay. And he was the first one who translated, rather initial scholars who are activists or as a leader, translated Communist Manifesto into Tamil. These are all fine. But he was an original thinker. He was not an intoxicated individual. I underline the word. The reasons are, just because, it's very rare to find a leader who expects people not to follow him just because he said it. It's very rare, because usually we look forward to have cheerleaders. I mean, he's the one who said that, that is a quintessential modern mind. He is requesting all of his followers, he urging all people of Tamil Nadu, you don't have to follow me just because I have said something. You have goddamn 1.44 kilo brain and apply that and use it and then analyze it. The first sign of a modern mind comes out from a leader through these words. Usually we expect simple fan following. And he was not the one. He's asking us to believe in yourself. That means a modern society was in the making. A simple, a kind of a community-based one. Otherwise, we have only Kula traditions. Who are you? You will not be able to say who I am, but rather we will say that we belong to this particular Kulam, the Kula Devata worship. These kind of an identity formation for the first time. Here is an old man from Erode trying to break that, to a large extent succeeded in doing that, and say that, yes, I am so-and-so. I am so-and-so is not simply an identification of an individual. It is a birth or invention of an individual as the crux or a nucleus of a modern society, without which emerging or rather inventing a modern society or a modern consciousness itself is a major problem. For all variety of reasons. See, please remember, capital and culture are two sides of the same coin. If you want to have a particular type of an economic activity, you need to have similar kind of a cultural pattern which would complement a particular type of economic activity. So economy and culture will have to go hand in hand. You will have an absolutely terrible feudal society, but you want to have a very advanced capitalist society, will not work. As Pugal has correctly pointed out, let us save capitalism from capitalists. Dr. Raghuram Rajan himself is a staunch admirer of American capitalism. He is deeply upset with, he didn't explicitly say that, we have created a crony capitalism. The reason is actually you have a feudal value structure, but you can't create a capitalist society. So what is important is actually Compared to Chinese, we have more English-speaking people in India. Absolutely, compatible with Western value structure, but still Chinese are attracting more foreign direct investment. Forget about the recent controversies of the trade issues and other things. Chinese are attracting more foreign direct investment because more than anybody else, Americans know, or Western capitalist societies would know that wherever I invest, it will yield dividends. Otherwise, in other places, it will simply remain a dead cash. Capital has to yield positive dividends, isn't it? So here is a place where I can put money, it will come back as a profit, without which modern capitalism, or for that matter, any economic activity cannot flourish. On what basis it can be done? An individual is the crux of the society. Here is a man who simply dismissed everything, dismantled everything, in fact, made you be sarcastic about your own past. That's very, very important. Reinventing your own past is not a modern nation or a modern consciousness. I'll talk about nation a little later. Reinventing, or rather simply reproducing your quote-unquote glorious past, will not make you modern. Again and again, Periyar was very, very sarcastic about that. Being a Tamil is not a great achievement. It is not your choice. We have to tell this hymnal variety of characters in Tamil society. Being born in a Tamil society is not your choice. It's not your great achievement. Bebakufs, please understand that. You have to live and behave like a Tamil. Behave like a Tamil. What is that behaving like a Tamil? What is actually a Tamil value? Here is a man who virtually bulldozed all that has been given to you as the romantic understanding of Tamil society. He, in Hindi people say the tod pod ka rajniti. He simply tore apart everything. Quite similar to, probably once I finish it, I'll send it to some of our friends. Quite similar to The Veil of Ignorance of John Rawls. He made you absolutely skeptical about everything that has been given to you as sacred and extremely valuable. For the first time, an individual coming up, and second, headless chicken type of an individual. Curious about it. Where am I heading to? What should I do? Now you pick up your social values. Now you pick up your social values. Oh, this old man has destroyed, insulted Hindu gods and goddesses. Any riots have taken place? Oh, he abused a particular community. Any violence has been subjected to any particular community? A small word, a simple word, a casual word in North India today would create a massive communal riots. Whereas in the case of Tamil society, for 50 to 60 years, this old man has stopped all kinds of things. Nothing had happened. Why? Because he could create, or he could ensure that it is essentially about an ideological component, not a particular individual component. So that is why, thanks to Professor Narendra Subramaniam, this is not simply about populism. This is something more than that. It has created a kind of an equal distribution, or rather a platform has been created where everybody could in fact claim his or her views from the state, which is of ultimate arbiter. In terms of distribution of resources, now everybody can claim, all communities can claim equal opportunity. Please remember, from casteless society, because that's a very contentious term, thanks to Professor Satish Deshpande, the notion of castelessness has been very often a very misleading one. Where is caste? All characters will say, you go to IITs, people will talk about that. Where is caste? Yeah, caste has disappeared. There is no caste. These notions of very, very notorious understanding of castelessness is basically a camouflaged understanding of caste parochialism. So therefore, thanks to Professor Satish Deshpande and to Professor Ajanta Subramaniam, both have in fact done some remarkable, incredibly wonderful work on the modern notions of caste. In the name of castelessness, actually caste is operating. In the name of merit, caste is actually operating. So here is a man, instead of simply talking about romantically about castelessness and things like that, he provided an opportunity for all of us to claim equal status, as simple as that. So you have created a society all along in the name of caste-based one. And of course, now the justice has to be along the caste-based lines, as simple as that. So I have exploited people along caste-based lines, but whereas when justice is done, it has to be in class-based, this bakwas will have to stop. So here is a man who problematized that simple point. So he spoke about the birth of an individual or invention of an individual, then he made it possible that you don't have to be romantic about, or you don't have to be a cheerleader of being a Tamil. That's okay. But you behave like a Tamil. That's very, very important. What is Tamil is not simply a language. It is a value. What is a value? That's it. Therefore, the point is actually he was not a reckless atheist. His admiration for Buddhism is very remarkable. More than anybody else, Dr. Ambedkar, in fact, spoke about Periyar's defense of Buddhism, and rather celebrations of, rather very, very wonderful words about Buddhism. More than anybody, Dr. Ambedkar had acknowledged Periyar's contribution. Reason is actually your actions are more important. Your thinking is more important. How do you conduct yourself vis-a-vis the another individual is more important. May sound very, very cliche or perhaps very simplistic. Imagine 100 years ago, expecting an individual to behave with another individual based on his or her behavior in public realm is a revolutionary thing. If my behavior, without knowing anything, if my surname automatically gives an impression to people that this is how I have to be treated in public, and here is a man who simply, as Dharini has correctly pointed out, we don't have to worry too much about our caste surname because it is an unnecessary burden. The history has given us some unnecessary burden. Create a modern world. Let us create a modern world. How do we create it? Just because being a Tamil? You don't have to be very romantic about that. You don't have to be very unnecessarily, rather what I call it, euphoric about it. How do you conduct yourself? In order to conduct yourself as a Tamil, that is where Tamil nationalism emerges. Not simply, oh, you are born in Tamil Nadu, you are a Tamil speaking fellow, obviously you are Tamil. This is a kind of a fascist mindset. Those who are born in Germany speaking German language, that is enough. You have to necessarily hate non-Germans, particularly Jewish. No wonder why they have people, their followers have names like Himmler. Right? Please understand, friends. Please understand. This is the important task. Periyar had to be given to the next generation, not as simply a reckless atheist, a torchbearer of Tamil nationalism. He is the one who laid the foundation for a Tamil nationalist consciousness, an inclusive society, and a democratic society. When can we be democratic? For which you need to have a kind of a social structure where individual becomes the nucleus. Second, you need to have a culture that's highly flexible, highly democratic, highly inclusive, highly critical of its own past. You have to create your own history as the other. Who is the other for Germans during Second World War? The Jews are the others. You ask our cowbucks, who is the other? Muslims are the other. But for Tamilians, who is the other? Your history has become the other. Your own history has become the other. You don't have to be romantically inclined or associating yourself with the 5,000-year-old. Everybody will tell. One fellow will say 2,000 years of Tamil history, 3,000 years, 5,000 years. What nonsense it is. Very simply, forget it. Getting freedom from the British is okay, but freedom too is more important. From is okay. Freedom to what? Why many post-colonial countries, Asian and African countries, have simply collapsed or at the verge of collapse? What was the reason? People like Noam Chomsky are designating some countries as failed state. What was the reason? Here is a kind of very formidable initiatives taken by this old man. Traveled till his death, talking about important things to be a Tamil, to become Tamil, not being a Tamil, to become Tamil. And that is why he is the torchbearer, or rather founding father of Tamil nationalism. Just because his mother tongue is Kannada, I don't care. I simply don't care. Just because our fellow who talks about Tamil nationalism, almost like, some kind of a electric shock type of a reaction he will give, picking up a chapel and then, publicly speaking all kinds of a nasty thing. These are the people who are actually posing greatest threat to Tamil nationalism. They will become extremely dogmatic. It is very easy for them to identify the other. Their history is not. Instead, people they will ensure a kind of a semi-fascistic traditions. They have already done, their admirers, or rather their great leaders have done remarkable, what I call it, painful human catastrophe in our neighboring countries. The reason is actually, if you are not internally democratic, that means, see, fighting against the outsider is one thing, so-called the alien oppressor is one thing. But in the process, how do you alter yourself is very, very important. That's what makes a nation. Fighting against the British is fine, Babu, TK, that's all okay. But in the process, how do you reorganize yourself? That's very, very important. If colonialism is one form of reordering the society in order to facilitate the colonial loot, but fighting against colonialism will have to again reordering yourself. How do we reorder? Thanks to Timothy Mitchell. How do you reorder yourself? Here is a man who gave us the blueprint. For any material, for any gadget, you get a manual. But here we are trying to create a nation. What is the manual? Where is the manual? Here is the man. He did not give his manual. He will ask us to think about our manual. All of us now will have to come together. Chalo, TK, whatever we were. But today we are all going to be modern minds of Tamil nation. Modern minds of Tamil nation. So therefore, how do we negotiate? Now hereafter, whatever new system we are creating, all of us will have equal access to it. Is that okay, buddy? This is how he has created. Surprisingly, Gandhi never was very great fan of nationalism. Gandhi was not. Gandhi was a little apprehensive about the pitfalls of, or rather the dangerous consequences of nationalism. So is the case with Periyar. Periyar may not have talked about nationalism, quote unquote. That is for Dinatindi readers to understand. Periyar never talked about it. That is for S.V. Shekhar type of characters to talk about. That is what our Himmler varieties who are now saying that Periyar never talked about. He is a Kannadiga and things like that. Garay, please understand that. He is the one who laid the foundation for you to be a modern mind and to be a Tamil national. So it is easy to say that, no, Periyar never talked about nation and nationalism. No, that is a very common sense understanding. He laid the foundation for us to be a nation in the making. Only then we all can think of a better tomorrow. So freedom from the British is fine, but freedom to what is more important? Freedom to be an individual, what I call it, self-conscious political being. Self-conscious political being. That is the nucleus of a nation. So we reordered the society. He gave us the blueprint. This is how we have to do without harming anybody else, without creating any ruckus, without creating any bloodbath, without creating any civil riots or civil war. Here is a man who offered us a blueprint. Recreate yourself, or rather recreate your own social structure in such a way that all of us will have equal access to all resources. What is stopping us from doing that? Your goddamn culture. Destroy that one. Your so-called history, because history comes as a kind of a power. Culture comes as a kind of a power. So people will not say that women should not go out to education, higher education institution. Women should not get into job. Nobody will say like that. People will say that our culture is in trouble. If your prime minister is saying that cow is your mother, I think some serious counseling is required for this type of people. You understand? Why? Only in a heightened feudal society where domestication of animals become an integral part of the feudal society. Heightened feudalism, not agriculture. Agriculture is a global phenomenon, but not all agricultural societies are feudal societies. Only in heightened agriculture societies where the romantic understanding, or rather a divinization of cattle who are part of their agriculture activity, now you don't have to be part of that feudal society. You don't have to be part. But what we can do is a kind of, as Dharani has correctly pointed, animal rights. Animal rights. So people will say that, oh, cow is being protected even in the constitution. Devakoops, in which section of the constitution where it is referred to? Not under the section called protecting Hindu religion. Not under the section of protecting Hindu religion, which is, cow protection has become integral. Cow protection is integral, rather important. Cow slaughter is to be cautiously dealt with. The reason is actually your local economy will be in ruin. We are barely a new state. Hardly about 2 to 3 years into republic, or into independence. Forget about republic, independence. So therefore, in a totally ruined economy, Your rural economy is essential, where cattle and milk and then agricultural activities quite vital. Somehow it can sustain. So it is essentially to protect the rural economy, not explicitly, but implicitly, where cow protection is in fact referred to. And government job is not to create menus. If somebody is obsessed with creating menus, what people should eat, what people should not eat, then it is not a government. These chefs should be somewhere else in hotels. And here is a man who was sarcastic about everything else. Imagine 21st century today in 2021, how he would have reacted. He would have in fact been very sarcastic, probably spitting on their faces more than those people spitting on us for those who are voting for those people. You understand? The reason is actually, it is making us freedom to what? It is problematizing. He would be problematizing this aspect. Freedom to slavery? No. Freedom to slavery? No, not at all. So therefore, we have let down Periyar to some extent by going along with this type of characters. Not only the cowbucks, our Himmler varieties also. So therefore, the more important thing is the challenges are growing, disproportionately it is growing. Not only from the cowbucks, not only from our so-called Tamil radical Himmler varieties, right? It is growing disproportionately. So therefore, it is necessary, absolutely pertinent to talk more about Periyar today than ever in the past. Very, very important. And necessarily, we have to dissect Periyar to the extent that it becomes relevant for the contemporary challenges. I hope we will continue to do that. Thank you so much.